My name is Elaine Sanchez. I am the founder of CaregiverHelp. And over the course of the last 5 years, five of my closest friends have lost their husbands. And as I have grieved with these women and for them, I have recognized that each person's experience after the death of a loved one is as unique as the relationship that they had with them while they were alive. And I've also noticed that they've had to deal with some incredibly difficult and unexpected realities when it comes to life after caregiving and living solo and all that entails. So, dealing with the unexpected challenges that coming with settling the business affairs and living on your own and making all of the decisions by yourself made me realize that this journey is one which people should not do alone. They need support. So, knowing that I am not an expert in this area, I invited my friend and even more importantly, my husband and my certified financial planner professional, Brenna Baucum. Brenna, thank you so much for being here today. Brenna has been a certified financial planner for quite some time. She started in the business about 15 years ago. Is that right?
Yep. Hmm.
And I think we were with you from the very beginning when
You
you
were
were,
when I was
yeah,
just a little greeny. Yep.
yeah, when you were greenie. And now she has guided us through some incredibly difficult and challenging situations, including I was the executor for my parents' estate and the personal representative for my Aunt Jean's estate. And both of those were messy and complicated. And so, knowing how difficult that was, then Brenna has helped us um, in our planning, not only to live comfortably now, but to be able to um, have our finances and make the gifts that we want to upon our deaths without ever being destitute as old people, right?
That's a big piece of what we do is answer that question, am I going to be okay? That's the
Yeah,
heart of everyone's question.
right.
And I think no matter how much you feel like you have your estate plan organized, that maybe
Yes,
your folks or Aunt Jean did, there's
yes.
there's always some stuff to
There's
clean up,
always
to
stuff.
do, to navigate. It's
Yeah,
not an easy role. Yeah.
yeah. So a few weeks ago, one of the women in our support groups said her husband had died. And so she was thinking, I need to cancel his credit card.
Sure.
So she called the credit card company and she said, I'm calling to cancel my husband's card. He passed away 2 weeks ago. And the woman on the other end of the line said, your husband's no longer living? And she said, no, he's not. He passed away on Christmas Eve. And she said, oh, she said, he was the primary card holder. I have to cancel the entire account. And she just hung up on her. And so that was the one credit card that they had. And now here she was, needing to do all of these things. And now she had to go out and establish some credit on her own and get a new card.
Oh,
So I thought,
yeah.
this is something that we really, really need to talk about. So
Hmm.
today's topic is before death, what we can do to avoid chaos. So, Brenna, I'm gonna ask you, what are the things that we should be thinking about while our loved ones are still alive?
Yeah, I think that example of your friend is such a great example of, well, wait, I thought I was doing the right thing. I
Hmm.
thought I should be calling. And imagine how many auto withdrawals or payments she probably had set up to that credit card. And all of a
Yes.
sudden, those are cut, which means you have to go quickly. And that's what we want to try to avoid when we're
Hmm.
thinking through what are the things, maybe there's some level of caregiving that you're already doing. And now we need to be proactive before this person passes away. So, one of the things absolutely is making sure there's not just one person on any given account. So, sometimes I see folks who will tend to delegate out who has
Mhm.
what. So by far, every single couple I work with has one person in the household that's the household CFO and one
Yes,
person who does other stuff, right?
right.
Because it's a division of labor and it's completely normal. And so what I want to do first, if that person is not you,
Hmm.
if you're not the household CFO, that's okay.
Hmm.
Nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed of, but
Hmm.
it is something to shift over this time period because you
Hmm.
have to get your arms around where our accounts live. You know, usually everyone has a shared understanding of where the banking accounts are, but
Right.
investment accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, all of those things, trying
Hmm.
to make sure that there's clarity on all sides of what's where, who has what.
Hmm.
So what I see happen sometimes is people will wait too long to start to get
Yes.
on each other's accounts.
Yeah.
They will delay, they will wait until maybe cognitive decline has
Mhm.
picked up or other, you know, kind of, I mean, you, I'm sure, talk about this all the time in your work,
We do.
the step down process of what happens.
Right.
So as much as possible, trying to get a shared understanding of what's going on for both of you, and get clarity both ways on those accounts to avoid something
So
like that
which
happening.
accounts should be the of the greatest concern?
Yeah. So I think the credit cards we just talked about,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Banking accounts,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. There are some investment accounts as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible. So there are some accounts that you just can't have joint ownership on, like an
Mm-hmm.
IRA. Those are all always owned by an individual and not a
Oh, that's
couple.
right. That's
And
right.
so in order to have access to that, that's where a power of attorney comes into play. And so, as much as possible, if you have a financial professional that you're working with or
Mm-hmm.
a banker that you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
sharing that information early can be really valuable. Where you're saying, hey, here's the power of attorney. We don't need to click it on right now, or maybe we don't, maybe we do. Um, and what do I need from you? Because it's really common that places like US Bank
Mm-hmm.
or Schwab or
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard or
Mm-hmm.
Fidelity, they all have their own power of attorneys that you'll have to complete in addition to the one your attorney
Yeah.
put together for you.
Yes, that's a really, really good point. When I talk about, never as an attorney or legal advice, but when I talk about the documents that people need, I always say you need a durable power of attorney, and they can be
Mhm.
called different things in different states.
Yeah.
And I stress the importance of making sure that this person doesn't have any addictions, alcohol, drugs, that they have good credit, that they are absolutely trustworthy, that they don't have a spouse who has any issues like this. Because
Mhm.
when you give somebody power of attorney, you're basically giving them the keys to your kingdom, right?
Right,
They
right.
can, yeah.
And I think there are different types of powers of attorney. There's
Yes, let's talk
financial, there's
about that.
health. And so I think that's important, and we can talk about it a little bit later of who is the right person for each
Right,
of these roles.
right.
But in terms of getting access to accounts and that kind of
Mhm.
thing, that's where knowing in advance. So I had a client whose husband progressive dementia and transitioned into memory
Mhm.
care, and she went to the bank with her attorney drafted power of attorney and said, "I need to implement this." And she said, "Great, here's our form. Have your husband sign it."
Yes.
And it was like,
Yes.
"Wait, what?"
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Right. So getting those wheels greased in advance
Yes.
when the person you're caring for has cognitive ability makes things so
Mhm.
much easier later,
Mhm.
rather than having to go back and forth or get a doctor's note. I mean, she was really zipping around town doing these errands, trying to figure out how to make this work now that since it was kind of too late to have his involvement in it.
Yes, it's really important that that you get these signatures while the person still has the cognitive ability to understand what they're signing,
Mhm.
and that they can actually sign it. Because if you don't do that, it can get very messy and complicated.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And that's, kind of one side of our
Mhm.
financial lives, but the
Mhm.
other is just the reality of where we are now in time are
Mhm.
online logins and passwords and two-factor
Mhm.
authentication and
Mhm.
those kind of
Mhm.
things that the more you can get an awareness around, have a
Mm-hmm.
shared space for where your passwords are.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I'm doing this, but not a piece of paper, not my
No,
recommendation.
no, no.
Recommendation is a password manager, but those are all the things that just take time and
They
understanding.
do.
And I think that's from kind of an asset perspective, and from a cash flow perspective, what kind of income do you and your partner have? And what happens to that income
Yes.
if and when they pass?
Yes.
Whether it's a pension, social security. So again, understanding access, understanding information. It's harder to get that information once that primary cardholder, account owner, whatever is incapacitated or gone.
So that just made me think. I know that Social Security needs to be notified right away,
Right.
and that's not always an easy thing to do, is it?
It's not. And the most efficient way I have found, certainly anything you can do online,
Mhm.
but the most efficient way that I found is we find the local office number
Uh-huh.
and make an appointment. If you call the 800 number, goes into, you get put into a cycle where you may never
Yes.
talk to a human being.
Yes.
But that does, I have seen people make good progress with that, of being able to have a one-on-one face-to-face with somebody. Yeah.
That's really important, and thank you for letting us know that, because I hadn't thought about that either. So my mind is going back now and thinking about bank accounts and investment accounts. So if you are working with a certified financial planner, I'm assuming that a person who has gone through all of this training, education, and they have the knowledge, that they're going to make sure that your investments are set up so that when something happens to one spouse, it goes to the other, right?
Right. And I think there's the thing, the role that oftentimes a qualified advisor can play is somebody who is playing quarterback for you.
I like that.
So
Yeah.
saying, okay, we need to talk to the attorney. I'm not an attorney, right? I
Mhm,
make sure my clients have a good
mhm,
attorney. We need to
mhm,
talk to the CPA. I'm not a
mhm.
CPA. We need to make sure we have and make sure information is being shared. And
Yes,
so usually that's what I see when people feel the most supported, is they have
yes,
those three professionals on their team: an attorney, a CPA, and a CFP,
yes,
because together we can really do good things for the client and ease the administrative burden in a way that is, especially as you transition, any life transition, but
right.
certainly as you go through the transition of loss, makes a big difference. Yeah.
And we've had three financial planners before we had you, and you are the first person to do that. And it really gave us a tremendous feeling of peace and um, comfort, knowing that everybody was working together, that all of you knew one another, everybody knew the plan, and that when something would happen to one of us, then the kids wouldn't be thrown into the kind of chaos and confusion that I had to deal with my parents and with my Aunt Jean. So we're going to be coming back with more important topics. But before I leave this one, Brenna, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we could do now to avoid chaos
Mm.
after a person dies?
Yeah, I think first, thank you for those kind words. I think peace and calm are always the feeling you should have when you're working
Yes.
with a professional. So that's a good litmus test for your viewers of, do I feel that way with my professional
Yes, it
team?
is. It certainly is.
And so I think one of the first ones is notifying your professional team that a change is in place, whether that's your financial professional, your banker, your attorney. Those are
Mhm,
usually the three
mhm,
that need to know
mhm,
early. Say, hey,
mhm,
this is happening. Is there anything we can be doing now while my
mhm,
spouse is still of sound mind? Is there any, can I
mhm.
have him come in? Can we sign to, I say him because usually it is the woman who is the caretaker, and we tend to live longer. Um, is there anything we can do now to try
Mhm.
to make this easier if and when things progress? So I think that's a great place to start. And I think in
Yeah.
the same vein, and I know you're a huge advocate of this, is sharing sharing information with other support people in your life. So it's
Yes,
not just all on you. I think the more you can share, you get to see the beauty of the professional and the personal relationships that you've built over time and how
yes,
willing they are to be there for you. So
yes, yes. And that's so important.
yeah, so I think those notifying people and sharing this information so it's not all on you is one big thing. And then the other that I see be very comforting is checking in on immediate cash availability. So
Yes.
how much money is in the savings account now? Typical rule of thumb is maybe 3 to 6 months of
Hmm.
expenses. But in a time like this of transition, I often see people feel more comfortable with something like 6 to 12 months of expenses in
Hmm.
cash.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because if a big care need transition takes place, you want to just be able to pay for that and not worry. So the more that we
That's a
can
really
take
good point. Yeah.
the timing concern out of cash
Mhm.
needs, the more comfort and calm we can be. And that's always the goal.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And we will be back with more episodes and more information. When Brenna and I first started looking at doing this, we thought this is too much to do all in one setting.
Yeah.
There are so many things to be considered and so many things um, that I hadn't thought of that she does. And so I'm grateful for you being here. I'm grateful for you sharing this information. And we will be back with another um, episode in this series soon. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.